today's meeting. So we had our first conversation last week, and it was the first of what we hope will be many more conversations along the same line. There was a significant amount of participation. It was a very lively panel. And what we had indicated last week was that this series would continue. Obviously, the reason why we're doing this, the immediate reason why we're doing this, is that we're working to try to galvanize and mobilize Nigerians to be part of the National Action Network Get Your Knee Off Our Necks March that's going to be taking place on August 28th, 2020. This march has taken place for many years. It's actually organized by Reverend Al Sharpton. It's his network. But this march takes on special significance this year in light of what has been going on with the George Floyd-driven BLM protest march for racial justice. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that there is a strong Nigerian presence and that Nigerian Americans will have an opportunity to very clearly make our views and our presence felt. But if you're going to make your views and your presence felt, it means in the first instance, we actually have to be in a position where we can articulate what those views are. So what these conversations are intended to help us do is to understand what that Nigerian American view is. What are our racial experiences? How are we viewing this period in time? And more specifically, how are the different generations of Nigerians in the US viewing this? The first generation Nigerians, and then we're realizing and understanding that there might be different views that younger Nigerians have, given the different experiences. So are there different experiences that the different generations also have? So hopefully we're going to have another really interesting panel today. Something we started last week, which will continue, is to remind people that when we march on the 28th, we march not only for the memory of George Floyd, we march not only for racial justice, but we march in memory of Toyin Salau, a young Nigerian who lost her life after participating in one of the BLM marches in Florida, and she would have turned 20 a day before the August 28th march. And if anything, I think Toyin is a clear example of the fact that there are Nigerians that are participating. And what we want to do, as I indicated on the 28th, is to come out in force to ensure that Nigerians go there not as individuals, but as part of a community. Last week, we, as I said, had a very interesting session. There were a number of questions that we posed to folks, and these are some of the responses we got. There will be, again, throughout today's conversation, there will be more polls, there will be more questions, but this is just a summary of what we saw last week. Nigerian Americans, by a significant majority, believe that we can actually do more to further the cause of racial equity. Nigerian Americans believe that in terms of whether or not they've ever experienced racism, a significant number, 83%, believe that they've actually personally experienced overt racism. And when asked the question of whether or not they'll be willing to participate or spread the word to take part in the march, every single person who was with us last week indicated that they were ready to join us. We have lots of participants today. We want to thank you for coming. I will soon go into the panel. And amongst the broad cross-section of people coming are a very wide variety of people. You're going to meet a number of exciting people on the panel. And we also have folks like Ugorji, who was also at one time the former deputy mayor of Newark. So a broad cross-section of Nigerians, we want to welcome all of you to today's panel and to today's session. We have a great lineup of panelists. They come from a wide range of experiences. We have Dr. Julia Ugorji, who is Dean of Nursing and Allied Health, a healthcare practitioner, healthcare intellectual, and academic. We have Ms. Chris Ademiluyi, who is a real estate broker here in the Maryland area and is extremely active politically in Nigerian American affairs, as well as within, basically just participating politically as well here in the Maryland area. We have Mr. Deji Akomolafe, who is an IT specialist and who is also extremely active, not just in politics within the US as an activist, but also personally from my experiences with him, active in Nigerian politics as well as the greater African diaspora as well. And then we have Mr. Damola Ogunleye, a young Nigerian doing really exciting and interesting things out in Houston, Texas. So we have a broad range of people with us today. My name is Malcolm Fabiyi. I'll be the moderator today, and we are assisted by Ms. Rachel Onamusi, who is helping us coordinate the webinars as well. So without wasting any further time, we'll start talking to the panelists. They're the ones we're here to talk to. So I will start with Mr. Deji Akomolafe. Each of the panelists in the first period will have 5 minutes to just give us a broad overview. They'll tell us who they are, and they'll give us some sense of what their views are about the Nigerian American racial experience. They would tell it to us from their own unique perspective. And after that initial set of 5 minutes, then we will go into a set of questions that we already have for them. But we also want this to be an extremely interactive webinar. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please throw them in. Let's be active in the chat room. Come up with your questions, and we'll make sure that the panelists have sufficient time to address it. So, Mr. Deji Akomolafe, you have 5 minutes to please give us, at a high level, tell us who you are and give us your sense of what you believe the Nigerian American experience is as far as racial issues are concerned, and basically why we should be involved.
Thank you, Dr. Fabiyi. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are calling in from. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak with you today. My name is Deji Akomolafe. Within the Nigerian community, I call myself an angry Nigerian. And in the larger Pan-African movement, I'm an unapologetic Pan-Africanist. By profession, I'm a systems architect. I've been in Silicon Valley for a quarter of a century now. I specialize in virtualization and cloud computing. I'm very much engaged in a lot of activities geared at uplifting, educating, and enabling Africans and developing Africans in the areas of technologies. I am a board member of the Technology Advisory Board for African Diaspora Network Nation. I'm also a member of the African Diaspora Network. As Dr. Fabiyi has graciously mentioned, I have been known to dabble in efforts to change the political narratives and realities in Nigeria. I've also been very actively involved in the American politics. My first campaign was with for the second term of Bill Clinton, and I'm honored and happy to admit that I was actively involved in both of Barack Obama's campaigns. And my view on race and race generally is not so pleasant. Some of it I can actually verbalize in public forums like this. I've been lucky to have traveled extensively. I've lived in many of the continents. I've taught, I've worked in everywhere but the Antarctica. And I've seen firsthand um, racial disparity, discriminations, and outright animosity based on nothing but the hues of my skin. And I can say, while we're here talking directly and particularly about racism in America, as an American, I make no apologies to anyone. I cede no ground to anyone. But I want to shock you a little bit by saying, yes, the insidious effect of racism, systemic racism, institutionalized racism exists in almost all the fabrics of America. Even with that, I can say confidently and categorically that America still happens to be where it's much easier for people like me to actually attempt to redress, correct, and maybe minimize to a large extent, and hopefully eliminate the traits of racism, the historical stratification of the Blacks in societies, and the overall disenfranchisement and disempowerment of Africans. I hope to be able to continue to shed more light on this with you as we go on in this conversation. I am asking that you please try to get involved in the conversation. Let's make it interactive. I don't want to, and I don't suppose the panelists want to just talk at you. It would be very much welcome if we could make it interactive and engage and get your own perspective as well. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Akomolafe, for your perspective. We'll now go to Ms. Chris Ademiluyi for her 5 minutes perspective as well. So again, the format we're going to take is we're going to spend 5 minutes with each panelist, just getting their overview of the subject. And then when that period is done, we're going to then get into the interactive portion of today's webinar, and they'll be getting back to you with comments from some of the things you said. And we'll be taking questions that we have. We already have a list of questions that we have that have been compiled. And then we also have today's participants would also be taking whatever questions they have, whatever views they have that they want answers to. So please, Ms. Chris, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Do we have a...
She needs to unmute herself.
Ms. Chris, you are muted. Can we unmute Ms. Chris? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay,
yes,
great.
we can hear you.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. I know you're all well blessed and highly favored like me. And thank you for inviting me, Dr. Fabiyi. I am popularly known as Miss Chris Ademiluyi, but my Yoruba name is Biodu. And I am a realtor and a broker in PG County area, and a single mother of three engineers, lawyer, and well, this is a very touchy moment for me because we had ignored this issue for so long, and But one thing, I am glad that we are dealing with it. And what I mean is, we Nigerian Americans, we think, oh, we're not involved. They have nothing to do with us. Oh, it's just, Black Americans this, Black Americans are that, because we really didn't know the roots. I had that opinion too when I was at Howard University years ago in the early 70s. We think we could not identify with their issues. But now that we are part of them now, we see what is going on. And some of our children are also being experiencing the same issue going on these days. A Nigerian lady, and she's a realtor. Her son was killed by the policeman in Montgomery County. And this young guy, 1 year to graduation, I think, at Bowie State. And he was playing basketball and he broke his arm. And so he had a cast in his right arm. And the police said the arm looks like a gun. The cast and the arm looks like a gun. And so he shot him on the chest. And when the case went to court, the videotape was handed over by a liquor store that had a video of the event. And what happened, somehow they said the videotape was erased. So the policeman got away with it. So it's just, our stories are not out there, so we don't know it's happening to us too. Because we didn't know how to make it known, to fight. We don't have the money. We don't have the support from our people to express what we're going through. So I thank you all today for coming out to tell us what is going on, that how you perceive what's going on. And I also urge you guys to please do not give up trying to support, because our children will be at some point they will be Americans. They won't be Nigerian Americans anymore. So that's all I have to say, and I yield the rest of my time to Dr. Fabiyi.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chris. Please, can you tell us what this young man's name was, the young man that was killed?
I don't have his name with me right now, but I remember I put it on the forum.
That's right, I recall that.
Dr. Tunuga is just saying that it's Emmanuel Okutuga.
Okay.
And the tragedy occurred in 2011.
Okay, so thank you for that perspective, and I think it just drives home the point that we may remember that we also have, the Nigerian American community has, here we are hearing about the story of a young Nigerian American kid. Final year before he graduates from Bowie University, gets killed. And the story as we understand it is the policeman thinks a cast on his hand looks like a gun. The case goes to court. The liquor store hands over a video of the event to the DA, and in the DA's office, the evidence gets erased, And I presume, Ma, that I presume nothing came of the case after that?
No, the police walked. He
Because
went home. No evidence.
all right. So this is real, and it's real on so many levels. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think as we march, so one of the things we'll certainly do on August 28th is that as we march for Toyin, as we march for George Floyd, we're certainly going to be marching for the memory of Emmanuel as well and seeking justice for him in every way that is possible. Thanks for that perspective. We will now go to Damola Ogunleye for him to share his perspectives in 5 minutes with us. And then after Mr. Ogunleye, we will then have Dr. Julia Ugorji provide us with a 5-minute perspective as well. So Mr. Ogunleye, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Fabiyi. Good day, everyone. And thank you, everyone, for joining in and for being part of this discussion. As Dr. Fabiyi mentioned, my name is Damola Ogunleye, and I live in Houston, Texas now. About me, I consider myself an extroverted, introverted person. I know the importance of getting out there, but I like to be in my own thoughts. I also like to believe myself a cultural anthropologist, in that I want to understand the genesis of different cultures or different dynamics. As a person, I am a father, I'm a new father, I'm a husband. Professionally, I am a cell biologist, and for work, I do FDA compliance for regenerative medicine. How I would say I gotten more involved in these conversations, I've been speaking to my peers who have been in the States for a while, and the United States if by large is considered home to these people. Speaking about these movements, you hear a lot of things about home and what home is, and it's very it struck me interesting that even these individuals still consider or speak to Nigeria as home, which is valid. Home is that's where we're from. But the reality is, home is where we are now. Most likely, these people's children are going to be here. They're never going to know Nigeria as home. As a result of that, most of the, actually not most, every injustice or every social injustice that's happening because of our skin tone doesn't separate us, whether you're first generation or second generation or third generation, or even a fifth generation migrant. You're still considered Black in the first place. And I'm tired of the intersection, intersection and separation identities, intersection in that where, Nigerian Americans are Black when it can be beneficial, but then we're separationist when when it is something of a negative connotation, and every one of us, even in corporate or not, we must have faced some type of microaggressions, and even police does this. They hear your accent, they see your name, and they try to separate you from them, saying from African Americans, when in reality is before they hear your name or hear your voice, you're already considered as one. So why the separationist when this is a time where we need to really forge a union, because there's really strength in our numbers and strength in unity. And that's why I'm part of these conversations.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ogunleye, for that really incisive perspective. The notion of home, where is home? And does the way in which we process the reality of where home is and our conception of where home is, does it have an impact on our level of participation. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that is going to be one of the interesting directions in which we will certainly be going today. Dr. Ugorji, please, the floor is yours for your perspectives.
Thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Malcolm, for making me to be part of this. I've known you for a while. We've worked in so when you called me, I couldn't say no. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. And thanks to all my family members and friends out there for calling in to, be part of this conversation and to support. Like Dr. Malcolm just rightly introduced, my name is Dr. Ugorji. I'm from Nigeria, Imo State, as a matter of fact. First of all, I'm a mother. I'm a proud married mother of 5. I live in Washington, D.C., but I work in Minnesota. You could ask me how that works. It's been working for me. I am a community leader, by profession, I'm a nurse, very diverse setting experience, but finally settled in leadership in academia. Like Dr. Malcolm said, I'm a dean of nursing and allied health at North Hennepin Community College in Minnesota. I'm very active in the community, very, very active. For those who know me, currently serving as the board. I called in a little late. I just zoomed out of a NANA board meeting, National Association of the Nigerian Nurses in US, where I served as a past national president and currently serving as a board member. I also was the founder and first president of NANA DMV from 2014 to 2018. So I love what I do. My perspective of racism, racism is man-made. It's man-made. That's what I share people, because people is a belief that, people have that group of people are more superior than other. They judge you according to your color, according to your characteristics. I went to church today, and the reading today just was like, wow. I was writing, and my family were like, what's she writing? When you're looking for your freedom, you have to be very careful. You don't want to lose freedom, chasing freedom. Racism is a global issue. It's all over the place, but we want to bring it home where we live. I just appreciate what the last speaker said. This is our home here. We keep saying we're going back. I don't know when. Most of our kids, they don't even know, there's no other home for them other than United States of America. So what we are fighting now is for them to have a place where they can stay comfortably, not watching their backs, walking back and forth. So how do we achieve those things? We have to get involved. Getting involved means you walk the walk. No, you talk the talk and you walk the walk. Having this discussion, protesting because of something happened, people were killed, police brutality, it's not going to end it. We have to get involved and make sure we have somebody at the table where decisions are made. Because as a nurse, I approach issues holistically. As a leader, I approach issues holistically. I know that if you're not at the table, you're in the menu. If you are not at the table where decisions about you are made, people make decisions that affect you. So this movement is in the right direction and it is on time. So being on point means that everybody has to take away emotions, we have to take away sentiments and get involved. Getting involved means being together. We are Nigerians. I am one of them. Went to school in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria. We are doing extra well individually, but we don't do well together. We don't do well together because we have trust issues among ourselves. Dr. Fabiyi knows this. I share some of this stuff. We have to be together. When we say together, we have to have one voice, because I know the more, the merrier. And with together and teamwork, things are not overwhelming. You do your part, A, we do her part, Z, we do part, and we come together. That's, Clinton said that we are better together. So as Nigerians, we need to put ourselves together and be together and speak with one voice That is the only way we can fight this forth and put somebody on the table where decisions are made. We can't protest, we can't talk, we are not politically involved. If we are politically involved where decisions are made, oh yeah, we could achieve. I mean, Nigerians are the most educated in US. You come to the nursing profession where I am part of them. Nigerians have the most educated nurses in Nigeria. Are we at the table where decisions are made? No. Why? Because we are all going, one on our own, everybody on their own. To your tent, oh Israel, everybody on their own, everybody on their own. So I appreciate this discussion where we are all, it's like I said, it is on point. The time is right for all, for Nigerians to come together as a team, speak with one voice and move forward. Because of what? Because of our kids. This is our fight. It's our fight because our kids are here. And people fought for us to be where we are now. So if we don't do our part, I'm not sure what the fate of our children will be. So I don't know if my 5 hours has gone, or if I have more time, I have more things to say, Dr. Fabiyi.
I think we're good for now, Dr. Ugorji. The 5 minutes are up, but thanks so much for those perspectives, and we'll have some time to come back and delve deeper into those issues. So last week we were asking the question, why should we be involved? Is this even our fight? And I think overwhelmingly a number of us have come to the conclusion, if we weren't there already, I think a lot of people appear to have come to the conclusion that it is our fight for a variety of reasons. It's our fight because, one, it's a fundamental issue of justice. Number two, a bullet looking for a Black person will not ask that person before it enters into that body whether you are Nigerian or whether you are African American. And then even though, and we shared, there were some, and we had panelists last week that also shared some perspectives, and perspectives that I've also experienced, which is you get pulled over, and if you have the opportunity of actually talking to a cop, you immediately see that their stance changes when they hear you have an accent. And Mr. Ogunleye actually spoke to that. But guess what? Our second generation children and our third generation children have no accents. They don't. So when they get pulled over, even if we, their parents, think that we are immune to this, the reality is our children are not immune to this at all. And before they have an opportunity to explain who they are, before they have an opportunity to say anything, their color is what they are judged based on. So even if we're not doing it for ourselves, then maybe we do it for our children. And we had the opportunity last week to also have some intergenerational perspectives to understand how younger Nigerians view these issues versus those of us that, that are perhaps much older. There was something that was raised, and a number of people have touched on it, and I want to go further into that. It's this question of where is home, right? Where is home? Because home is that place that I think you are willing to fight for. And so I have a confession to make. And that confession is that every time, so I'll throw this out. And let me ask the panelists, what their perception is. So I'll start with you, Damola. You raised the issue initially. So let me go back to you. At what point did you start thinking this was home for you? And if I would follow that up, and did the idea that this was home for you, that the US is home, did that change your approach? Did it change your attitude? Did it make you think differently about engagement here?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fabiyi. That's a great question, and to be very transparent, there isn't a definitive moment that you realize this is home. It's almost an evolving process. There'll be each time you go back home and you're like, well, I think I could do this. I think I'm going to move back home. And then some of the necessities that you enjoy or take for granted, you tend to miss them. And then you come back and it's like, come back here. And then, you realize that there's really just a gap that you might not be able to adopt or adapt to. So I can't say that there was a significant moment for me, but I can add that since the birth of my son, and realizing that most of what he would know would be based here in the United States, my fight and my voice became louder. Because like you said, I'm not just fighting for myself. A lot of times, you know, especially when you grow up in Nigeria, you have that certain type of street savviness that you feel you can get out of sticky situations. Our children, or my son, is most likely not going to have that same experience. And as a result, it's important for us to start changing that narrative. And it has to start from, and I think Miss Chris mentioned it, it has to start from the historical perspective, understanding the generational and psychological impact that slavery has had, and the systemic impact of demoralizing and just disenfranchising Black families in the US, for us to be able to be sensitized to the plight so that we can now be connected.
Thank you very much for that perspective. I will now throw that same question to Mr. Akomolafe. Is this home for you? And did the realization, and was there a process? Was there a moment? And if there was, has anything changed from the day you determined that this was home for you in some form or fashion? Has it changed your engagement with political matters in this country? Do we still have Mr. Akomolafe?
All right, I apologize for that. Thank you, Dr. Fabiyi. It's a complicated question for the Yoruba in me. Naturally, Yorubas, we travel and we settle far and wide, historically. However, most people on this call, and most Nigerians and Americans in the diaspora generally, when you pick up your luggage and wave goodbye to your people back home on that first journey outward, it's a time-limited, time-scoped endeavor. I'll be back in 4 or 5 years or in 3 years or whatever. You always live with the expectation of returning home. Now, the reality is, as the travelers that we've always been, we also have this notion that home is where the night finds you. When I left Nigeria with the expectation that it will be temporary and I'll be back. Things happened. The first time it crossed my mind that, yeah, this might be home was when I had my son. That changed perspective. But then the pull of the Nigerianness in me keeps making me look back to Nigeria. At this point, as I'm sitting here with you, if you were asked to ask me, where is home? Home is still bifurcated for me. I am under no illusion that any of my children is going to call Nigeria home. Now, will I call Nigeria home? It is one of the reasons why I do what I do. I believe in the potential of Nigeria, and I'm agonized. And this is one of the reasons I call myself an angry Nigerian, because I see how successful Nigerians are externally everywhere, and I see how we contribute to any society in which we find ourselves. I like to say that Nigerians are exceptionally good. Now, the good can be the good, or the other good. Whatever we do, we excel And this is not just me speaking. This is what I've also heard verbalized everywhere, especially where I work, operate in the past 25, 27 years. There's hardly any university in America where you don't find a Nigerian lecturer. I've been to the remotest part of Germany, or the book world, the dark forest, run into Nigerians in suits, in Germany, in an office full of Germans. So we excel. Now, the pull back to Nigeria is the continued belief that nothing is wrong with Nigeria except the leadership. So my answer to your question, like I said, is complicated. Home for me, I'm struggling. I know America is home. Now the home is also Nigeria if Nigeria can get its act together.
Okay. So thanks for that perspective. But as the next speakers, so I'm going to call on Dr. Ugorji, and then after Dr. Ugorji, Ms. Ademiluyi. And we have the benefit today of actually having in our presence a Nigerian, Mr. Ogunleye, who was the deputy mayor, I believe, in the city of Newark, in I believe that is Newark, New Jersey. So once our panelists finish speaking, Mr. Ugo is here with us, and we would be interested in having this question taken by a Nigerian American who has actually been involved in the political process at a deputy mayoral level. But as our next speakers, next panelists speak, here's what I would like you to consider as well, is that does saying America is home mean Nigeria is no longer home? Why can't we have a dual concept of home? Everybody else does it. The Jewish American believes himself to be both Jewish and American at the same time. They are helping, they are working and engaged in the US, and they are extremely passionate about their country. Every politician that speaks to the Jewish community here is not talking to the Jewish community about matters, Jewish matters in America alone. They are coming to talk to the Jewish community about matters in Israel, understanding that there's a duality to the concept of home for them. And almost everybody else does this. Why is it so difficult for us as Nigerians? Why is it that home is such a complicated matter that for a lot of us, it almost feels as if identifying that you are Nigerian American, thinking of this place as home, which therefore means that your engagement with this place changes. Maybe it means we become more engaged and things like that. But why do we struggle with this duality of when did it become home, and can we only have one home? Can't America and Nigeria be home at the same time? Can't we fight for equity here and justice here, while at the same time keeping an eye on making sure that our country moves forward? So Ms. Chris, I'll start with you. And then Dr. Julia, once you respond to that, we will then call on Mr. Ugorji to please provide us with some perspectives. So Ms. Chris, we need you to unmute. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Fabiyi. That question just brought so much on my mind. My late uncle, Tuss Benson, he worked on the red carpet in 1959 with the Prime Minister of Nigeria. And that just working on a red carpet, to me, he was there to prepare for Nigerians to call home, to call America home. And I'm one of those Nigerians that call America home. And I thank him greatly for that. He passed away, my dad passed away. There were 29 brothers and sisters. They all passed away. And I just don't feel like I will call Nigeria home. And I have not been to Nigeria since, what, 1980, 84, 83. I have not been to Nigeria. So I call America home. Maybe also because I've been single parent. I became single parent since then. And America had done so much for my children that I cannot, I'm not able to identify with Nigeria anymore. And so I don't know. I don't think I still talk about Nigeria, but I never ever felt it's my home. So maybe if God has something for me to do in Nigeria, he would take me there. But I would not personally pack my suitcases and say I'm going to Nigeria.
Okay.
That's my take.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that perspective. But so politically though, I mean, how long have you been involved? I know you're very much involved in the community. I know that you have, not only are you involved, I know your children are involved. I know you have a daughter running to be a judge in one of the largest counties here in Maryland. So were you always politically involved? Was it as soon as you landed in this country, did you decide that, look, in order for me to get the most out of this place, I have to throw myself into America economically, politically, culturally, and otherwise? Was that a decision you made?
Yes, I have been involved in politics for a long, long time. But I did not see myself running for office because this county does not accept us.
Okay.
Also, we have accent, and the county, the people of the county, it's mainly African Americans. And when I was in college at Howard University in the 70s, there was always an issue of Africans want to take over. So I did not actually see myself running for office, but I supported all the politicians of my time.
Okay. Okay.
In my county.
Okay.
And I worked with Obama.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that perspective, and we'll come back to that. We'll now go to Dr. Ugorji, and once Dr. Ugorji finishes speaking, we will then go to Mr. Ugo Unwaokoro, who has participated, who was a deputy mayor, and who can help provide us with a unique perspective. So Dr. Ugorji, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, Dr. Fabiyi. Thank you so much for this question. This question is really, really, really very critical, and it has a diverse perspective, and it is somehow individualized. Because my understanding of home, when you say home, H-O-M-E, we're not talking about a house. A home is a place you call a home. There is peace. When you come into a home, you should be at peace. You should be happy. You should feel love and freedom when you say home. So this fight right here we are fighting is not for my generation. And I believe many people, I don't know everybody's age, but many people online or the panel, let me use the panel where I know, many of us are not fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for our children, which may be next generation. So if I sit down here and say Nigeria is going to be a home for my kids, it may be an illusion. Somebody mentioned that word, As a nurse, I say that again, as a nurse educator, conducive environment is very critical to what I do every day. Conducive environment. If the environment is not conducive, there's no way for a teacher, a professor to come and talk to students and they will listen. So when I say Nigeria is my home, it's in parentheses. Nigeria is my home. But when I left Nigeria over 20 years ago, sold every single thing I have, dashed out, every single thing I have, valuable items, thinking that probably who knows where I was going, and came over to United States and started life all over again. Is a circle. Is a circle. So whatever it takes for me to be happy, comfortable, at peace, my freedom in this country, that's how I function. Because as a nurse, like I said again, holistically, I know that tomorrow is not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed for any human being. So I don't live my life that, oh, I must go in Nigeria, I must live in US. Wherever I find myself the next day, that is my home, and I make it as peaceful, as conducive as possible. Why can't I say Nigeria is my home for the rest of my life? I go to Nigeria, you know that, at least twice, not since the corona, pandemic. I go to Nigeria because I'm very active in the community through the Nigerian Nurses Association and my foundation. I go to Nigeria, volunteer my time, my life, my money, to help people. But do you have the safety to jump into the plane and go to Nigeria where you call a home and just go to bed and sleep? No, we all know that. It's a fact. It's reality. So where, like, I know I'm not going to Nigeria this month. So if I don't, make this month a home, I mean, I'm deceiving myself. I agree in the philosophy of making Nigeria a home, making US home. I mean, something is not right with that equation. Because I have seen people who haven't been to Nigeria, but they have mansions, they have whatever money they have in the bank, and they end up die here. You couldn't even take their body to Nigeria. So what can we call that? I don't know. I would like somebody to help. What can we call that? So I feel that this fight is not for us. It's not for our generation. It's for our kids, generations to come. How can we help them to find their home? How can we help them not to live in fear? How can we help them not to be paranoid? How can we help them to understand that freedom is a given? It doesn't depend on anybody's hand. That's my understanding of a home and the fight we are in, Dr. Fabiyi.
Okay, thank you for that. So really interesting perspectives. And before we close out this round of questions, we want to call on Mr. Ogunleye. Please, you are welcome to take the floor. Please introduce yourself to the House and then provide us with your unique perspectives on this question. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Dr. Fabiyi, and thank you, members of the panel, and thank you all participants. I must tell you, I wish I didn't have to speak because I was enjoying, listening to everything that everybody had to say until Miss Chris said what she said. She's given up to Nigeria, and I understand that. So I would like, let me just get him give to some of the questions. Well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Ugorji, the former deputy mayor of the city of Newark. I was the former deputy mayor until September last year, when I became the president and CEO of African Diaspora for Good Governance, which I will talk to you more about that. I am indeed very happy and excited to be here. Let's look at the first question that you talk. Why should we get involved? Is this fight our fight or their fight? Let's go back to Nigeria, where we're from. There are certain sectors of Nigeria that is still fighting, but the marginalization, the ethnicism, and all that in Nigeria. But what makes the difference here is that when you get organized in a society like America, you can win that fight. As against in Nigeria, no matter how you fight, the system will continue to bring you down, which is one of the reasons why some of us are here abroad. Now, why should we get involved? If you get involved, you get information. If you get information, you know your rights. When you know your rights, you begin to make demands. So I would, let me give you a little history of my involvement here. In 2014, the candidate then, who is now the mayor, Ras Baraka, approached me and wanted us to help him galvanize African votes. And we did that. Even though we thought it was crazy that we didn't think Africans could get organized. But as God will have it, we got organized. And we got behind him, and we took him from being an underdog, because he was not the Democratic Party candidate. We took him from being an underdog to being the winner of the election. But we negotiated with him. We told him, we're not just going to give you our votes. We want to be part of where the decisions are made. We want to be involved. So we made demands. So one of our demands was to have the first African-born judge, and then to have our people in his administration. So he won, and he appointed me a deputy mayor, and he asked me to nominate somebody for the judgeship, and we produced the first African-born judge, a Nigerian. And then he also asked me to nominate somebody else for the chief municipal prosecutor. Then he also nominated some Africans on a directorship level. So just by being involved, that outing, we got all this. Now you look at the social part. When I became the deputy mayor, I was the deputy mayor in charge of international relations and diaspora affairs. So whoever that is visiting the city from outside the country would have to go through my office. We had prime ministers, presidents, governors, a lot of them from outside the country. I had to welcome them to the city and then take them to the mayor and all that. So one of the most prominent ones that we had in the city was the Oni of Ife. The Oni of Ife visited us in the city of Newark for 6 days. The first day he came, we gave him the reception, and he still said it. He never had any reception like that. We closed, for some of you that are familiar with the Holland Tunnel, we shut down Holland Tunnel on his movement, his entourage, for 2 days that he passed through the Holland Tunnel. We gave him all these receptions. And he turned around, he told me, wow, that he never knew that someday they could close the Holland Tunnel for anybody. But we did that for him. And this is just because our own, a Nigerian, was involved. And then so on and so forth. Our African, plus including Nigerian kids, now work at the city, both part-time or what, because we laid the ground. So it is very important for us to get involved. But we can't get involved if we are not organized. So the key to getting involved is getting organized, not individually. So one of the things we did was we formed ourselves as a United African Forum. So it was that forum that we used. There are other people that supported these candidates, but because we were organized, because we had people registering to vote, we had people on our side, we were the ones that were recognized. So that is how we executed that. So the Nigerians, like somebody said earlier, individually were very successful, but that wouldn't take us anywhere if we don't work together. Like somebody mentioned about the Jews. What happened to George Floyd, or our brother in Montgomery that was killed, could not happen to a Jewish person. Now you ask yourself, why is that? It's because they are organized. The moment you lay your hands on a Jewish person, they're going to go after you. They're going to dig your great-great-grandfather out from the grave, and they're going to question him. They're going to do whatever it is to make sure that that doesn't happen. And now that brings me into the other question: why we're struggling to have both Nigeria and America as homes? The Jews have succeeded. And how did they do that? You're going to look at the level of investment. The first thing they did for Israel was to make Israel conducive. I believe it was Dr. Ugorji that talked about being conducive, having a conducive environment. Every day you and I go to Nigeria, we risk our lives. We risk our lives, God forbid accident happens, God forbid something, armed robbery and all that stuff. So when they say that they should come, like I wrote an article against America allowing Nigerians to even come, those people to visit. because I said they should fix Nigeria first so that we Americans can also visit Nigeria and have all the comforts of living in Nigeria. Please forgive me, I'm trying to rush through this thing. There's so much thoughts in this. So just excuse me if I'm going too fast or if I'm talking about too many things, because there's a lot to. So the Jewish folks, right, are organized. And because they are organized, if what happens to George Floyd or anybody happens to Jewish people, the police, not just the police, like I said earlier, the great-grandfather, his late great-grandfather, all of them will be in trouble. And the first thing they're going to do, they will never try something like that. So in order for us to succeed, to make this, I mean, it's funny, at times I go to events and they introduce me as originally from Nigeria. And when I get on the podium, I correct that first. You know, the first thing I say, you introduce me as originally from Nigeria, as if I've given up to Nigeria. I say, I am still a Nigerian. I will remain a Nigerian till I die. It's just that I'm now a Nigerian American. So we as a Nigerian, we have to get organized, and we have to begin to influence things in Nigeria. If you look at your forum, for instance, and excuse me for pointing that out, if you look at your forum tonight, it's predominantly Yorubas. You see that? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong, you know. So, but we have to get ourselves organized. We are looking for a new Nigeria. So a new Nigeria must be new Nigeria, not like the Nigeria we know in Nigeria. In order for us to make a difference, we have to take each other along. The Yorubas should stop looking at the Igbos as if there's something. The Igbos should stop looking at the Yorubas as if there's something that separates us. But if we must have a new Nigeria, you know, we all have to work together. Let me go back to the Ooni of Ife during his visit. During his visit,
So, Mr. Please, we have 2 more minutes for you. Where I'm
oh,
enjoying.
great.
I'm
Okay, good.
enjoying.
I know. I told you I have a lot to say, but I'm just
Go
going
on.
to rush through it. You know.
Go on.
So, but I want to bring you to how we need to change our mindset first and foremost. So, I formed a committee to welcome His Imperial Majesty to the city of Newark. So, because of this Yoruba, Igbo, all this ethnic whatever in Nigeria, so when the Yorubas that came in my office, I immediately knew that I was an Igbo man, of course. So they had a problem, you know, but we had a protocol. I'm going to jump some of these steps. The protocol says when somebody is visiting, the deputy mayor who is in charge of international relations will go and welcome the person, bring him to his office, and then take him to the mayor. When the mayor announces arrival at the mayor's office, the mayor will now welcome us. So when the mayor, you know, when that happened, I told them, my Yoruba brothers say, oh, you just got to welcome him and take him straight to the mayor's office. We don't want him to come to your office. You see that? They don't want him to come to my office. The reason being because I'm an Igbo. And they also told me that I don't have to shake his hand. I don't have to shake the wife's hand. But guess what? The African Americans in my office, who are my staff, would come and they would shake hands, and the wife and all that, and I stomached all that that was when they came. But then I told them that we're going to do it differently. That as a Nigerian who understands the culture, that I know when anywhere the owner visits, the highest authority in the building welcomes him. I told them that I've already spoken to the mayor, that that's what we're going to do, and that the mayor will come down, not even me. And that's when they relaxed and began to respect me. And that's exactly what the mayor did. So my people, let me talk to you about our organization, what you're doing. There's an organization that I head, which is ADDG, African Diaspora for Good Governance, which released a press release when George Floyd was killed. So for some of us that are on the line, if you haven't heard about ADDG, please go to addg.org and look it up. I think it might interest you. So on that note, I know your time is short. I would encourage Madam Chris, please, you have to come back to Nigeria. Don't give up. We need to take you back to Nigeria. I'm very serious, but because our movement, we're actually repatriating African Americans. But one of our tasks is to get Africa in order first, in a conducive environment. So one of the things we are doing immediately, we're trying to build about 55 hospitals in all the 55 countries in Africa.
Okay.
So there's a whole lot that we can do. So I thank you for inviting me. Let me just excuse, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take it. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Dr. Fabiyi, right? Fabiyi, sorry about that.
No problem. So thank you so much. And look, it's really, we can have all these conversations, but the type of perspective that Mr. Ugo provided is rare, because you can count, I don't think there's 1% of Nigerian Americans that have occupied the type of position that he's occupied and has been involved politically at the level that he has. So getting these types of insights, understanding why it is important for us to be organized, and understanding what the potential benefits of that organization can be for our cause, not just here in the US, but even outside as well. So for example, when the Jewish state was established after the after the Second World War, I think the strength of the Jewish American community in the US was actually immensely instrumental in helping Israel get recognized as a country. Immensely. When America had to deal with Iraq, when America had to deal with places like Lebanon, the views of Lebanese Americans, the views of Iraqi Americans are typically considered, and those things have been extremely vital to how America engages with those countries, and to a great extent, the level of development that you see in those countries. So I think it's that when we talk about this concept, this notion of a duality of what home means, I saw a question that somebody had asked, which was, why does it even matter where you call home? And I think to a large extent, when I see people engage, people who are extremely engaged politically here, people who will participate in marches and will, register to vote when they are eligible to vote, and would maybe even make themselves available to vote. One thing that I've seen time and time again is that they view, for them, this is not just a place they are passing through. For them, even if they have plans like most of us do, most of us first generation Nigerian Americans, even if their plans are to finish off their retirements back in Nigeria, they are committed to ensuring that while they are here, they are fully participating citizens, and that everything that is due to an American is going to be due to them and to their community. So having said that, there's a poll, please, that's on. I would encourage all of us to participate in that poll. What these polls are going to help us do is to help us continue to understand the views and the perspectives of our community. And as we move forward and continue to organize, it will help us begin to understand what direction that organization has to go in. I will ask this panel the same, a question that we've asked every panel and that we'll continue asking people. And, that's the question of what it is about this particular moment. What is it about what happened to George Floyd, about this moment in American history that is making you interested in being involved? Why did this make a difference when there had been so many other instances before that? Was it the fact that it seemed like everybody was outraged? But is there something in particular about this moment that has actually made you want to participate? So I will start with Mr. Akomolafe. Is there something about this moment in time, something about George Floyd's killing, that's making you keen to participate?
Thank you, Dr. Fabiyi. You know me so well that I've always participated. So for the benefit of everybody on the call, this is not a new territory for me. However, if I would like to maybe broaden the question, what is making more people participate today? And in response to that, I would say it's the real-time evidentiary documentation of the murder of Floyd. It was recorded. Everybody could see live go out of Floyd. and everybody could see Chauvin being as nonchalant as possible, and everybody could see that the knee on the neck of a human being who just happens to have a skin color that is deemed undesirable, lower than a dog. People have gone to jail for treating dogs and other animals with much less disdain. So there's always been atrocities, there's always been discrimination, there's always been this racism. Most of it have not been as documented in real life as the Floyd's case. However, we also know that the momentum has been building up. We Blacks, to my knowledge, having participated in many of these, we've not walked away from it. What we haven't been able to have, as we do now, is the feeling of outrage in the larger, or a more disproportionate part of the white and non-Black communities. This outraged more people than the normal killings or things that we've always seen. Now you shoot somebody, it's a fleeting moment of life expiration, but we and everybody could watch life drain out from this guy.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Dr. Ugorji the same question. Dr. Ugorji, what was it about this moment that did it for you? And what is it that is resonating with people?
Thank you so much, Dr. Fabiyi. For me, I will approach this, my response as a healthcare professional, as a nurse. I know in the nursing world, when somebody said, I can't breathe, is a serious emergency. You know, watching that video, 8 minutes something video, somebody screaming, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, and nothing was done. I mean, I had nightmares for 2-3 days before I was able to say, yeah, this is real. You know,
Dr. Ugorji,
yes,
Eric Garner said the same thing 5 years ago.
Yes,
he said, I can't. So what is it about this I can't breathe that was different?
Remember, people are hurrying. We are in global pandemic. We are in global pandemic. Many people don't have jobs. I know many nurses who doesn't have job. Everybody was at the age already, stressed out, anxiety level, paranoid about what is going on. And one single person or two individuals contributed to it. I mean, killing somebody for $20. He could be in the jail now and, you know, answering questions why he had or he didn't have $20. That could have been prevented. You know, it's being inhuman. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. You know, so if we continue to count it as one of those dates, I mean, then tomorrow is not guaranteed. It could be anybody. You know, my daughter went for a protest in DC, and she was hurt. And when I asked her, I said, why did you go? She started listing her siblings. It could have been John, it could have been James, it could have been Anthony, it could have been this. And that opened my eyes. I didn't answer any further questions. It could have been anybody. Like we said, if we don't fight this fight, who knows who's gonna be their turn tomorrow? I don't know, it could be anybody. So because things has been happening, I remember something happened for something to happen. Something has to happen for something to happen. You know, I'm sure nobody thought that this particular death could have caused all this discussion that is going on now, you know, globally. No. So I think the time was right. You know, the time was, you know, his George Floyd death was very timely. Unfortunately, you know, he's not here anymore because so many discussions have started right since after his death. Something has to happen for something to happen. I strongly believe in that. You know, but it's unfortunate we're talking about, you know, somebody who died for $20. You know, in police brutality.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that perspective. Mr. Ogunleye, you have the unique privilege of being the youngest member of this panel. What did it for you?
Did we tell you our age, Dr. Fabiyi? Did we?
I know you have
our
the young. I stand corrected.
Looks can be very deceiving.
I'm sorry for that interruption.
Yes. But like Dr. Ugorji had mentioned, and Mr. Akomolafe also said, it wasn't. I don't believe it was one thing. It's what I would call an imperfect storm, or perfect storm, depending on what side of the coin you look at it. In the sense that, leading up to this, apart from the Trevor Martins and the Eric Gardners, in the last years, we had documentaries that come out. There was the 13th. There was the As They See Us, the one about the Central Park 5. So people have already been incited, right? People have, and then social media has already made these to be televised, all of the social justice, which has always been there. Mix that with the pandemic, people are home. People are frustrated. And then the particular video, it wasn't, like you said, we've heard Eric Gardner saying, "I can't breathe." So it wasn't necessarily George Floyd saying, "I can't breathe." It was two things in the video that at least sparked something for me. It was the fact that he called out his mama and his kids. So that humanized him. He was a person that had a family too. And the smirk on the officer's face, knowing full well what he was doing, he was being recorded, and the nonchalancy of it, that it wasn't going to be a big deal, there wasn't going to be any type of retort to his actions. Altogether, just lighted that fuse, and that's why we are where we are now.
Thank you. Thanks for that perspective. And Miss Chris, please, what did it for you? You need to please unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
What did it for me was after the ambulance came, and the way they threw him, they must knew he was dead. The way they threw him on the stretcher and then pushed his head, that really got to me, that these are monsters. And how many have they done that there was no video? That's what did it for me. It hurts. It could have been anybody's child. It could have been my son. I only have one son. It could have been my son. It could be anybody. And how many have they done that nobody has? There's no record. And when and if there were records, they threw the record. They destroyed the records anyway. So I think this fight is a fight for everyone. And then it dawned on me that they have this attitude: I'm white, I'm entitled, I'm privileged. I can do anything I want and get away with it. That hurts. As a mother, it hurts. And we mothers need to go out there and answer that guy's call for his mother. When it was time, on his last breath, he was asking for his mother. Women need to go out there and do the fight also. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There have been a number of comments coming through, and I'm sure all of you have been participating to some extent on the polls that were posted. Ms. Rachel, is there anything Are there any comments you want to read and any results from the polls you want to share?
The results from the poll, when we asked if we felt that Nigerian Americans could do more to further the fight for justice in America, we had 22 people respond, where 21 people said, I don't even know what I just said, when 21 people said, yes, absolutely, and one person, 5% of the respondents said, no, Nigerians do not need to do any more. And we had the same number of respondents when we asked if the people on the call were actually eligible to vote. And we had 21 people say, yes, they were, and only one person said, no, they were not. I will be putting up one last poll regarding if you are eligible to vote, have you ever voted in any US elections since living there? And I'm going to be putting that out presently. I do want to read out a comment from Omar Okin, apologies if I'm pronouncing this wrong, who said, there are a myriad of things wrong with Africa, and for us here, Nigeria is specifically. If the goal is to create a new Nigeria or to talk about all the things that is wrong, we diffuse and dilute focus. We all don't need to agree on all issues, but we are all agreed that racism is rampant and the police are actively enforcing these policies. We are also agreed that we Nigerians are not immune. Let's sharpen our focus and hone in on that. And I think that's just a nice underline. We've heard so many perspectives in the last hour and a half. And I think that's important to say, look, there are different people at different stages, different levels of experience. Last week, we talked about those who had actually experienced overt overt racism, and an overwhelming majority of the respondents had, in fact, experienced overt racism. So I think if we just hone in on the fact that we're here to talk about police brutality and the way that they're upholding racism in America, then we might be able to forge a way forward. What else? Stella says the almost 9-minute video did it for me, and I've put up the details. So if you do want to join us, the contact details that are in the chat, if you want to register to go for the march and all of that.
Okay,
there are so many great comments, but yes, they've been flying fast and furious. But I think we're all agreed that something does need to be done, which is why I believe we're all on this call.
Okay, fantastic. So please, again, just keeping things in focus. The reason why we're having these conversations is to continue to mobilize a Nigerian contingent that will be part of the March for Justice that is going to take place on August 28th. There are many Nigerian Americans who have supported the BLM movement and the struggle for racial equity individually, but it's important for us to begin to try to speak with one voice. I think Mr. Ugo's contribution made something really clear, which is the fact that we may have, that we might talk about racism here, but we also come from a society where tribalism is huge, where we also have our own issues, ethnicity, tribalism. Those are real issues we have to deal with. But if we focus, as one of the commentators said, if we focus on what we all agree on, the one thing we all agree on is that racism is real, that it affects Black people, and that as Black persons in America, Nigerian Americans are also victims of racism. And therefore, it's a fight that pertains to all of us. And that even if those of us who are first-generation Nigerian Americans think that our accents might get us away from tight situations, we are giving birth to children here. We are invested in this country. This is home for us, whether that is a temporary notion of home or whether it is permanent. The reality is that this is truly home for us, and whatever and what would people do in their homes, people will be invested in not just what they do within their houses, they will be interested in ensuring that they have a nurturing, caring community around them, and that because of that, part of what we need to do is to get more involved and more engaged. We had the privilege of having a Nigerian American who has participated in politics and governance to speak with us. His perspectives were especially helpful. And so what we have here are a list of sites and email addresses. Anybody who wants to participate in future conversations, please send us an email to nig-am-march@wearegain.org. We need people to register to march. So a number of you have registered. So those on the call, those of you that have joined this webinar, Ms. Onamusi is posting those links. Please go right away and register to march. We must back up our words with action. So please register. Let's know you're coming. Bring people along. We're going to be having another conversation this time next week. Bring people along to that as well. Let's keep organizing. Let's keep talking. We may be speaking individually, but the power of the collective is significant. We also have a Facebook page. The link to that page is also going to be pasted in the commentary box, and I would please recommend that everybody, goes into the commentary box. If you haven't registered yet, if you have not joined us on Facebook, please do that. What I'll do now is I'll give all the participants, the panelists, a minute each to please just give us their concluding remarks. So anything you want to share with us in a minute. I'll start with Dr. Ugorji. So is Dr. Ugorji
Thank
still?
you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, thank you again, Dr. Fabiyi, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. My parting words for everyone will be: we're all angry. We are frustrated with what's going on, how Blacks are being treated globally. I said, let those anger, frustration, anxiety, stress be a motivating factor. Let that move us to the next level of action so that we talk the talk and we walk the walk. But let's do our homework first of all. Let us speak with one voice, because a divided home does not stand. And many people know Nigerians, so that they don't take us, here they come again. They don't take us serious. We have to be clear with our demand. We have to be very, very clear what we are asking for, so that we can put all the educations and degrees Nigerians have in this country into practice, and try to be at the table where decisions about us are being made. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ugorji. Thanks for those concluding remarks. Ms. Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Oh, I am so privileged and titled to be with this panel today. Thank you so very much, everybody that are listening to us. And one thing I want to share is we are here to stay, and we have to provide the way for our children. In other words, we have to help our children cross the street. We have to hold them by the hand and take them across the street. We don't have no uncles to send them to. We don't have no people that we know that we can say, okay, you finish your degree, go see Mr. So and so, he'll give you a job. We don't have that. But we have to start doing and making, so our children will have the same benefit we had when we're in Nigeria, and even some people here. And for instance, I give you one quick example. My daughter, April, she won the primary for judgeship. And one of the guys that she ran against, the father wrote a letter to all politicians to support his son or help. The father, he is a lobbyist. He has a lot of money. So he can taunt his money on their faces to get what he wanted. We don't have that. His son lost, and he said he called my daughter that Negro child. So my son's entitlement. That is wow. We could not do that because we don't have what he has. But we're going to start having it as long as we work together so we can help our children. Just the way he's trying to help his child, we don't have that level of power.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so we need to start working hard and work together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Chris. Damola, Mr. Ogunleye, please. Just your concluding remarks.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fabiyi, for having me on this panel. It's been very enlightening. Thank you to all the other panelists and our Honorable Ogunleye for joining in this conversation. I just want everyone to remember that, that Martin Luther King quote about a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we should really hold that quote deep within us. We have to also remember that the Immigration and National Act of 1965 that brought most of us into this country was a direct result of the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? So if not for these the fights for civil liberties, we would not be here. So we cannot separate ourselves from this fight. It is important that we join. And we have to mobilize to do that. We have to mobilize so that we have a voice, one voice to be able to speak in those necessary power table conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that perspective. Mr. Akomolafe, please, in about a minute, give us your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fabiyi. Thank you all to all the panelists and Mr. Onomose. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming and making this very interactive. I want to close on what Damola closed on. There was a question about whether this is our fight. And I really want to stress on the fact that that is a resounding yes. Why is that? It is a fight that was instigated, not our own, not initiated by us. And that fight is about what? The color of our skin. As long as you can't do anything about that color, you are in the fight, whether you like it or not. And if you are a parent, it is a fight you don't want to live for your children to fight. So it shouldn't even be a question of, are we in it or are we not in it? It is a fight, not of our choosing. It's a fight that was started, and the person or the system and the artifacts, the infrastructure sustaining that racist system that put that knee on our necks won't dismantle or remove that knee unless you join in the fight. Thank you very much. And if you're wondering if you should be involved, again, the answer is you have no choice. You have no option. You didn't call the fight. It was called, and you are the victim. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So again, we're putting up all of the contact details. Please go register to march. For those of you who would like us to, we want to expand the conversation. So please, when you're coming next week, bring a friend along if you want to participate in the panels. There have been a number of people that have indicated interest. We have, we're collating that list. We're trying to make sure that the panels are balanced out with people with different perspectives. that they'll be going to share. The next few panels we're going to be having will be digging again deeper into this question of where is home? Should we participate? Should we march? And what do we do beyond just marching? And what are the challenges and then the benefits to ourselves, to our community, and to our country by participating? So these are all the contact details, email contact details, the address to our Facebook page. If Mr. Sarumi is on, Mr. Sarumi, are you with us? Is Mr. Sarumi with us? Okay, it looks like we don't have Mr. Sarumi. So Mr. Sarumi is he was actually the prime motivator of this conversation that we're having. One of the prime organizers of Nigerian American community marching together as one with one voice and one purpose on August 28th. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Ms. Onamisi for helping us to coordinate the events today. I want to thank the panelists, Dr. Ugorji, Ms. Chris Ademiluyi, Mr. Deji Akomolafe, and Mr. Damola Ogunleye. And we certainly want to give thanks to Mr. Ogunleye as well for sharing your unique perspectives with everyone. Thanks for coming. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.